I guarantee you by the end of today, especially brand advertisers or people who have long tail advertising processes, so one of the features that this is going to enable is going to excite you. So bear with me. All right. You can't click what you can't see. This is, unless you close your eyes, this is ridiculous that our entire industry, all of you guys and my industry, is based on an assumption that a click was really clicked because the ad was really delivered. There is no proof of this. It does not exist. Even Facebook, even Google are telling you, oh, we definitely did deliver the ad. They probably did. Everyone else who's not self-attributing, there is no requirement for them to prove that. And I can guarantee you the percentage of your ads that you think are being displayed, you're probably about 40 to 50% off if you're a conservative on this guess. It is surreal. And to give you some evidence, I went and got, oh, sorry, why is this bad? It makes click spam very, very easy, right? I'm going to poach your installs, organics or from other networks, because I don't have to prove that the clicks I'm spamming came from ads that were really seen. Here are some numbers. Oh, it's a little bit small. Sorry, I have to squint a little bit. Here are some numbers I took from one of our leading clients without fraud prevention, and I did change the numbers, calm down lawyers. The first thing I'm going to say is there's no cost here. Don't do anything with a partner that will not send you cost data per user, not aggregate, because otherwise so much can be hidden away. You know, fantastic users being mixed with users that you don't want to target, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get into that. I don't have time. Demand cost from your partners. 101. From this, I can then start to extrapolate. I can look at effective CPCs, effective CPMs. But you'll notice, first off, if you're astute, you'll notice that Video Network B has a conversion rate of 40%. Definitely have a chat with those guys. That's not real. But you'll also notice, and you hear this a lot, particularly from performance networks, oh, we can't share impressions. We don't share impressions. We don't have that functionality. First off, they absolutely do. Secondly, we can extrapolate it. I'm going to give these networks a pretty generous 1% conversion rate, right? 1% conversion from impression to click, right? Which is pretty good. You can extrapolate from this for just Video Network B that either that advert was viewed 30,969 times, and this is for 1 month, or some of those impressions were not, some of those clicks were not delivered, right? Everybody on the planet had to see that ad 7 times and a little bit, or some of these clicks are not real. It is surreal how bad this issue is. To give you a little bit more context, these are the numbers that I just saw in January 2019. We saw 1.09 billion ad clicks, and we only saw 740 million impressions. That means if it's a 1-to-1 ratio, we don't know if 367 million of those clicks were actually, or those ads were actually shown. And for anyone who bids on video networks, you'll know they send a lot of impressions before a click. So there's no way that it's 1-to-1. So this means that 1.05 billion people a day click on an ad, not look at it, click on it, and then don't install it. Now, I'm pretty indecisive, right? When I go shopping, it takes a while, but no one is that indecisive. People aren't clicking ads and then going, nah, oh no, maybe I will. No, I won't. It just doesn't happen. And the reason this happens is because clicks and impressions in our industry, an industry built around getting people to click on ads, have no value. They are meaningless numbers. And I'm sure there are people in here, major players in here, who don't even look at the click and impression counts on a dashboard because you know it's a random number generator. It really doesn't matter. And that is the thing we're trying to tackle with click impression. No, click validation, sorry, through proof of impression is the full title. What is new? It's actually very, very simple. All we're going to ask partner networks to do is to send us an impression with an ID, and then when the click happens, send us the same ID. That is all. And by doing that, we can split on our dashboard and in our reporting clicks into that 2 different types. Unverified, which is the stuff we're getting now, but random clicks coming out of nowhere, and verified. And by doing this, sorry, these are the rules I just said, blah, 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 there we go. By doing this, you can then see in our dashboard or in your own reporting what percentage of your clicks have an impression tied to them, right? And then you can choose if you want to attribute to them or not, right? That will be a very aggressive stance, I think, to start with. While we're getting people on board with this, we will kind of maybe say, well, maybe you still want to attribute to the unverified. But it is absolutely our intention to promote and eventually get the industry to a point where you will not attribute to a click that you don't know was seen by someone, by a real human. Now, it seems quite sort of simple and quite sort of fundamental, but actually the impact that this has, the things it allows us to do are quite fundamental and will actually, I think, change this industry quite dramatically. First of all, it allows us to implement a staleness window. Because we now definitely know when the impression came in and when the click came in, we can say, okay, you can only attribute a click if the click came within X seconds of the impression. Now, the IAB does have a standard on this. We are going to go slightly longer than that IAB. We're still testing with some partners to understand the implications it has. But up until now, every single ad you have ever bought and every single dollar you've ever spent did not have this included. We only had click to install because your attribution providers could only see install times. Now we can see impression to click times. And this is 100% going to kill a huge amount of fraud because it is so hard to spam an impression and a click in the right pattern. You'll see that in a minute. It gets very exciting. Secondly, install to click checking the other way. In other words, you can't have an impression and a click happen at the same time, right? And there should be about, I don't know, 20 milliseconds, I would say, is probably the quickest you're going to react to an ad. That's the sort of area we're looking at. If you have an impression and a click, sort of 1 second, 1 millisecond apart, you've either just attributed the flash to your app or it wasn't a real, you're being spammed, right? And spoiler alert, you are being spammed. Next one, you can only have 1 click per unique impression. It's bizarre that it's 2019 and I have to say that out loud. We will see a single impression, probably fraudulent, and 900 clicks off the back of it, right? So either the guy who's clicking this has quite severe Parkinson's, or sorry, that's not appropriate. But it is total bullshit. It's all made up. It doesn't mean anything. And finally, the impression to click ratio, and this is the stuff that the brand advertisers, this is the stuff that the tactical advertisers are going to get excited about. We now know how many impressions led to clicks, how many clicks led to installs, and thus how many impressions led to installs, right? When people spam us and they try to get impressions in as well, they will spam combos, right? 1 impression to 1 click. They'll spam us both. You will immediately see in our dashboard a 100% click-through rate. And I talked before about Video Network B, who had a 60-something%, and that is like unrealistic. If you saw 100% in one of your creatives, you would know, oh, well, this is nonsense, and we're not going to attribute to it. So just this tiny little change to the rules of data coming into the attribution provider provides all of this. It also makes things much more difficult for our fraudster friends. Because first of all, you can't spam us with impressions now. If you do that, the biggest point, and I want to go on a little tangent here, I am not trying to upset our network partners, but this is a part of the puzzle. Spamming impressions to then spam clicks means that those networks have to track, report, and then attribute on every single impression that is spammed. And for many, many, many players in our industry, network players in our industry, this will destroy their profit margin. Now, there are many, many networks out there, and I do not want to be, a bringer of bad news here. There are plenty of players in the industry who block fraud the second they see it, right? Because they value your custom, and they trust us, and they trust the other attribution providers, that we will tell you if they don't. But there are no financial incentives until now for a network on their own bottom line to block fraudulent publishers. This will now make that a reality. The other thing is, if you spam impressions, your click-through rate will go through the ground, right? And yeah, you wouldn't see a 60% impression to click ratio, but you also wouldn't want to see a 0.00001, right? That would also stand out. People aren't seeing an ad 1,000,000 times and then clicking it. You also now can't spam clicks. The reason for this is you have to create all of those up-funnel metrics. In other words, you have to spam, this is really complicated, a believable number of impressions that come at a believable amount of time before the click, but not too long. And then the install that you are trying to steal has to also come a believable amount of time between the impression and the click. Now, it is impossible for us, because I'm not a fraudster, we don't know their methodologies. It is impossible for me to know the exact amount of data that this is going to require them to send. I would estimate they are probably going to have to send probably have to spam about 1,000+ impressions for every click. But that does not mean they will see the same success rate, because now we have those logics that I explained before to say, well, these impressions are ridiculous. So in other words, long story short, this process, and it can only send 1 click per impression. Sorry, I forgot about that. The punchline, I guess, is that spamming as an approach becomes an amazingly complex process. You essentially have to act like a human. But that's very, very hard for a computer to do. And we have all the advantages now because we know where the impressions are, we know where the clicks are. And it's security for you guys. I do want to very quickly touch on, for network partners who are already providing us with legitimate traffic and who are turning off fraud publishers, this will have no impact financially, right? And in fact, we will integrate with them to tell them, oh, we think these impressions are fraudulent. What do you think? So I do want to say to any network partners in here who are serving legitimate traffic, you have nothing to worry about. But any network partners in here who are intentionally benefiting from fraud, I wouldn't have turned up today if I were you. All right, very quickly, it provides some security for you guys. And this is where things get really exciting. First of all, in real time, you can see what percentage of the clicks coming in are partnered with a legitimate impression, right? That have followed and passed these logic checks and make sense. Secondly, you'll be able to control what type of clicks you attribute to. As I said, this is a new measure. I'm very keen for all of the networks to integrate. I'm also extremely hopeful that the other attribution providers will provide the same process so that we can eventually push the industry to a point where you have to see an ad to click it, which is, again, surreal that we have to work on that now. You can also understand what your partners are doing, right? As you'll be able to see clicks and impressions coming in, you'll be able to see when they turn things off. And it's not to chase them down, but it's to have better conversations with your network partners and say, look, I know you turned off this publisher for me. I know you turned off this publisher for me. I feel more confident spending more budget outside of Facebook, outside of Google, because you are following these rules. It is absolutely a win-win. And finally, clicks and impressions now have a value. Those columns on your dashboard that have been collecting cobwebs, they have a value. And there is so much you can do with this. Impression to click ratios, right? You can learn so much about how your advertising is affecting your users from the very start, the very first time they see an ad. Impression effects on LTV. I was joined earlier by someone from Skyscanner, and also there was a boating man. And both of those guys talked about, what do I do in the downtime, right? When people aren't buying stuff. Now you can see, is serving ads to them in the interim good for LTV? To people who get ads, who look at ads, because they're not going to click it if they're not interested, but in that off season, if they look at an ad, are they more likely or less likely to come back? Impression to LTV, impression to retention. These are things that are not meaningful in our industry because impressions and clicks don't mean anything until now. It's very cool. So I've done a very salesy slide at the end, I apologize, but there are 4 benefits to this new measure. First of all, we'll save you budgets, right? Turning off click spamming, turning off impression spamming publishers means that the amount of budget that is exposed to those publishers is reduced to 0, and your budgets are effectively protected. Secondly, your data is enriched. Clicks and impressions have real meanings. You can finally understand what is the impact that showing an ad has on a person. I think it's a very sad thing that we've never been able to answer that until now. What do my ads do to people when they view them? A question that can finally be answered. Thirdly, we will protect the partners. Now, I don't know these numbers. I'm very fair that the partners won't share these with us, but the networks suffer financially when they are spammed, as I explained. It is a very expensive process for them to store all that data, attribute to that data, report it to us, and they don't know what's going to happen because they can't see the install. Now, they are much more financially incentivized to block spamming, but also spammers themselves, they ain't going to be spamming anymore because the payout is just not going to be there. Sending a single click through a network to an attribution provider, you can do that in a curl script in about 50. I can write it in 10 minutes. Sending 100,000 impressions at the right time and then getting the install and the click has to go somewhere in there, but you can only have 1 click and it can't be 20 seconds. That's very, very difficult. That is extremely difficult. That would require all sorts of machine learning and such. So the partners too, we hope, will see a massive drop in the amount of spammed traffic that they deal with. And finally, our industry is secured. Fraud is a massive problem. We've heard from, the people on here, Intercepted and AppsFlyer both talked about how bad fraud is. And there is a fear. And we hear about players, advertisers in the industry who are scared to go outside of the most expensive networks because they just think their budgets are going to be torn apart by fraud. That is because fraud works because it is funded, right? Fraudsters aren't doing this for fun. They're doing it to take your money. There's no risk for them. You spam clicks, and if it doesn't work, you just spam them somewhere else. But now, to really get away with this spamming, you would have to make a significant financial investment, and it would be a gamble. So I really do believe that this will, I don't want to say save our industry, but it'll certainly take it a lot further along in terms of success. So guys, I've got over my time. I'm really sorry. I've lost my voice as well. Thank you for listening. You can't click what you can't see. Please talk to your partners about this. If a partner is not on board with this, let them know I'm coming for them, because this needs to be a standard. Thank you very much.